it's time to do the thing that we all love to do more than anything, stretch. So let's get that lower body stretch. We'll start off with our quad stretch. And we're gonna use our pad for the knee comfort and something to elevate the foot up behind the sweat. So let's go both knees on the ground, one foot back, slide one in front, have something out in front of you to hold on to. And let's elongate from the knee, through the hip, up to the rib cage, all the way through the shoulder. You raise the arm if it helps out. If your shoulders feel tight up there, don't worry about it. Just think lift, belly button to chin, abs tight, nice and straight. We're going for our 90-second stretches through this. Just try to feel that quad stretching. You shouldn't feel anything in the back. All on the front side of that leg stretching out. We're lifting the pelvis up, staying tight. You can always turn in slightly to get that outer insertions there, that high quad hip flexor. Find your position that feels the tightest on you, you work on that. Then let's go to our next position where we're going to go stretch. We're going to go foot out. And let's push out into it. Same thing, it's all about the hips, trying to straighten out down there. Make sure the tension stays right there in front of that hip. If it feels better to turn in, turn that right pelvis inward to try to get that lateral insertion to stretch out more so. If you're even more flexible, you can always work into your long position or your lower. Make sure you're feeling the quad and high hip flexor insertion stretch out. And ease out of that, and we'll go to the next leg. Both knees down. Take that left leg up there now. Swing that leg forward. And it's nice and tall now. Tall, tight. Breathe through it. Every time you're exhaling, imagine that muscle just stretching out more so. Exhale. Let that muscle release a little bit more every time you breathe it out. So lift arm if it helps bring that rib cage up. Find your angle that feels the best for you. So everyone's going to be a little more tight than the next person in different areas, so work on your spot. If that high position doesn't feel bad at all, transition sooner if you want. Go out in that stretch position. Don't force yourself too low if you can't get your hips out there. You want to get your hips to extend straight. I'm thinking about my left knee going all the way through my belt line up to that shoulder, stretched out as straight as possible. Just go to where it's a slight discomfort, no more than that. You gotta let that muscle ease into it so it has time to release and relax. Make it too painful or strain too much, then it's not going to want to release on you. So we'll ease out of that. Now from the front side of the legs, let's go ahead and go to the adductors on the inside. So let's go ahead and go into our position with that pad still, with the one leg out so we can sit into it and stretch out those adductors in there. So kick the leg out, slide the hips over, try to feel that stretch on those adductors, those inner thigh muscles. It's not too bad, you can always walk that leg out farther, sit more into it, find your low position that feels comfortable. If you're not too tight on the adductors, then great. If you're tighter on the hamstring side of the house, you can always turn the toes up a little bit, get that emphasis more posterior. Just find your position once again. music on, relax, enjoy the stretch time. And just ease out of those stretches, ease out. Switch them up. That object up in front of you if you need to ease into your stretches. Just make sure you're not straining anything else while you're trying to stretch a muscle. You don't want to defeat the purpose of making one thing tight by stretching the next thing. Just keep rotating and settling into them until you find the position that feels the best. Ball and socket joints, you can turn it 1 little degree and you may have a completely different feel of that stretch. That's all it takes sometimes. Now we'll go to the outer thighs. So if we can get in our pigeon pose, get that leg kicked out there a little bit. It's almost a rotation in this bottom hip. So I'm just trying to turn into that hip. If it helps, you can always have an object and lift the ankle and foot off the floor to help rotate down into that hip back there. Stay in that tall position at first. Try to focus on that hip you're sitting on to rotate. So thing. It's not the knee. We don't want to be jamming in the knee. We want to feel that transfer to the back of the hip back there. And if it doesn't feel good with that, if you don't need it, don't use it. But just think, turn into it, push the hip back into that ground. If it doesn't feel too bad at this high position, then we'll go into the tuck position. Keep the foot up there so it doesn't get too close to the body. Turn the chest into it. Kick that back leg back there as far as you can. Then you can just walk the hip back and down towards the ground. You can give a little reach. So when we're reaching, we're going to actually stretch out the lats and the upper back all the way through that low back and the top side, and we're stretching the hips we're sitting on. Get a little 2 for 1. Relax, then we'll switch it up. So I'm going to take my left leg, position it up there about 90 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and get my tall position, sit up into it, push the hip back. Just tighten my abs nice and tall as I'm turning that right pelvis forward into it. I'm turning into it. I can get that hip to stretch out back there. Tall and tight. Just mainly engaging my abs and pulling them tall as I'm turning the hip and pelvis into it. So I'm pushing back a little bit, stretching that hip. If that doesn't feel bad, I'm going to go ahead and walk it up. Walk that back leg there, back there as far as I can, and set the hips down into it. relax. Let that body open up. And relax. Let's go and get to the hamstring stretch now. Let's go and bring our pad back out so we can have our knee on it. A little more comfort. Let's take one leg. Let's go and start that right leg out in front, straight. Have something to hold on to off the side if you want. Hips level. Slide that opposing leg straight down the leg. So everything's gonna pretty well stay straight and level out at first. Just make sure that opposite side hip's not kicked out facing the sideways. Try to square the pelvis up. Have the foot right out in front of you. It's almost like you're letting your hips push back. You're lifting your tailbone in the air. I'm not really hunching over the back. I'm staying tall, pulling the backside of my pelvis up in there. If that doesn't feel too bad right there, then take the leg slightly across center. Turn that left side pelvis in even a little bit more at a slight angle. And then pull that pelvis. It's almost like you're pulling it up and back behind you. Get that lateral part, that outside part of that hamstring to stretch out. You may even draw your IT band over there a little bit with it. It all makes a difference in where that foot's facing also. If it's facing too far or too much to the side and I'm really drawing, you may get a lot of IT band with it. Turn it in, get back on those hamstrings. If your calves are feeling too much or it's pulling behind the knee too much, you can always take your toes and put them down so you can get to ease the calves up a little bit. But if your calves are tight, keep on working on bringing the toes up towards the head so those calves get to draw out of there also. Nice. And relax. And we'll switch up. Hips squared up, foot straight out, tall abs, slide the hip back. And bam, right there. Feel that hamstring. Breathe in the nose, out the mouth. Gotta keep those muscles loosened up so we can keep pushing hard with the weights. Tightness causes injuries. Doesn't feel too bad right there. Start a little rotation if it doesn't feel bad. Foot across. Turn the pelvis in even a little more. Oh yeah. Just make sure you're not ever feeling it in the back. You're never torquing your back. You're always manipulating your stretches with your pelvis. Tall, tight abs. You're not trying to turn that spinal column in there. Go and relax it, and at the very end, just go ahead and take the knees, fold them in, go and reach out to the ground, pull it back, let that low back stretch out for a second. Then ease on up, and good job. Now time to get to work.